all that was used the discussion of how.
Recording in progress.
Good evening. Welcome to the Sunbury Services Committee for October 5th, 2022. Can I get a roll call, please?
Joe St. John,
Here.
Damon Capel,
Here.
Murray Neff,
Here.
John Grumney,
Here.
4 present.
I am going to move to approve the minutes from the September 7th meeting. Have you all had a chance to catch up on those? Can I get a second? Second. Second by John Grumney. Roll call?
Damon Capel,
Yes.
John Grumney,
Yes.
Joe St. John,
Yes.
Murray Neff,
Yes.
4 yeas.
We don't have anybody listed in the visitors section. So we'll go on to unfinished business. And boy, is this first one an unfinished business. Sunbury Estates trees and sidewalks. So to give just a little bit of background on this, we had some sidewalk damage reported in the Sunbury Estates community. And by ordinance, the homeowners are responsible for damages to the sidewalk. But there was some, I would say, confusing factors at play in that some of the damage looks to be caused by the street trees. And at the time, we were going back and forth a little bit on who was responsible for the trees and under what condition the city was responsible for the trees. So Mr. Piles had gone to the community, had worked with the community to see what the issues were and came up with a couple different options. I'll let Steve go into it in more depth.
Okay. So the root cause of the sidewalk situation there.
Is that a pun?
That's just.
No, it's right in, it's in my presentation, so it can't be a pun. But it truly is the wrong tree ended up in the wrong place. The trees are too big for what is a rather limited tree lawn. And so, and it's the type of tree that doesn't shoot roots down, it shoots roots out. So back in 21, there's a group that does sidewalk cutting, which is a process where they plane the sidewalk to get rid of minor up to 2-inch offsets in sidewalks. They found 300 hazards in that area and 13 tear out and replaces in that area where it was beyond what they could fix. Let's see, what else do I want to add to that? So we've had that discussion of, does Sunbury take ownership of the areas around the trees? Brad and I were talking today. We did a rough, if we don't deal with the tree issue, which is either the trees come out or we talk with the residents about making, little half moons, it would take the sidewalk, move it onto their property slightly to get the trees enough space to grow. We can fix the sidewalks there, and in 5 years, you'll be back to fix those sidewalks because the trees are going to continue to do what the trees are doing. And they've got a 20-25 year head start on growing up. So there's about 200 trees in that neighborhood. Even at conservatively $800 a tree to remove them, that's $160,000 just to take out the trees. And then, to replace them, you're probably into that for another $40,000. So I think we need to, and I haven't had the opportunity, and I will schedule the opportunity to meet with the residents to tell them, what we're facing here. But I really think the best option is to talk to them about saving the trees. We are a tree city, but giving the trees enough room through the sidewalk meander and engaging them to allow us to do sidewalk meanders there. if there's not enough residents willing to do that, then we're either going to enforce our ordinance or enforce some portion of our ordinance, or we're going to be faced with, we can make a repair, probably for 40,000, maybe 50. We can do repair all these hazards with the planing of the sidewalks. We've got some sections we'll have to tear out and replace. But you'll be back talking about this in 5 or 10 years, I'm afraid. So your options are to get a lasting solution, get rid of the trees and get a more appropriate tree for the tree lawn, or get rid of the trees and provide the residents that want one with a tree that they can plant on their grounds, or do some kind of meandering, repair the sidewalks and meander them around the trees that are impacting the sidewalks. I see those as kind of the two main paths forward here.
So with the meandering sidewalk, I have 2 questions. One, do we have any kind of a estimate as to what that would cost because you are adding sidewalk? And 2, are we sure it's actually going to solve the problem, or are we 15 years down the road going to have broken meandered sidewalks?
There are other communities that have used meanders and they've worked. We'll have to go back and look at how many of those meanders we would need to give you an estimate of how much that's going to cost. It's certainly not going to cost as much as getting rid of those trees and dealing with the street trees.
Surprised at the removal cost estimate. That's a bigger number than I would have thought.
Yeah, there are, based on our experience, because we had one that we had to act on because it was a drainage issue with someone's sump line. The areas are very busy with utilities, and there's also those curb drains. So I think given the size of the trees, even in a bulk deal, we're
20-year-old red maples.
yeah.
I mean, they're
They're
hard wood and big.
They might have some. They're small enough that they're probably not really good for someone that would want to harvest them for a purpose, but they're big enough to be a challenge to someone who's got to cut them and reuse them as firewood or chip them up. And it would take a huge chipper to, some of them I don't think you could chip without one of those semi-drawn big barrel bucket chippers that doubles as a concrete crusher.
Brad, do you have anything you want to weigh in on? My honest opinion with what I had to deal with last week with removal of the tree. This particular instance, the tree was at the back set of the cul-de-sac where the 2 driveways, when the aprons flare back, they draw up and make a pretty tight area. Well, the tree happened to be in that. So it was affecting 2 neighbors. The gas line is just about dead centered all the way around the cul-de-sac. The saving grace there was it was deep enough that even taking it out with a hoe, we didn't have any issues with that. The one tree with the root ball and everything that we took out was a pretty healthy load in one of our medium-sized dump trucks. And it was pretty easy. I have pictures of that if anybody wants to look at it. But, of course, when we rolled the root ball out and finished cutting the rest and taking it all out, the homeowner's pipe was all embedded, and just grown shut and everything else. And they were trying to get around it and couldn't get around it because that style tree, when it branches out, if you choke it at all, it starts kind of puffing up, if you will, at the base. So all that becomes solid wood, not just fingers of roots sticking out. So you end up with a pretty good platform of wood, if you will, that was clear underneath the sidewalk, underneath the apron on one side, and actually had jacked the apron of the driveway up about 3 inches from the height of the curb. And it's not an easy fix. You know, some of them are worse than others. Some of them we can probably get away with chipping and, you know, maybe not complete stump removal. But either way, it's going to take some doing. But I feel,
sorry, go ahead.
I feel in the long run, you know, you can pay now, pay later, you can keep paying, or take a stance, get them out of there, put things back, because I noticed in about 4 places that it's actually starting to affect curb, it's starting to affect aprons. So it's pretty substantial. It's going to come back to where it's starting to mess with water flows in the street and the whole 9 yards and storm runoff. And then we have one structure that's we rebuilt it it'd be 2 summers ago, and it's inundated. The tree kind of grew in under the road and around the structure. So we go back and clean it out periodically.
Really, I mean, 2 main issues. I mean, I'll just call it a design issue primarily. It was the wrong trees and not a wide enough tree lawn. And even if it isn't a tree lawn, if you've got utilities and curbs in the nearby vicinity, red maples by nature, you know, push things up, and they're pretty invasive under the ground. And they, I guess back to the meandering question, we're trying to preserve these trees. We're still going to have all of the things. I mean, yeah, we're going to fix maybe the sidewalks directly adjacent, but we're still going to have it's going into the gutter pipes going out to the street, and it's still going to go underneath driveways and things of that nature.
It's very true. I think what I heard you say is let's deal with the trees and then deal with the sidewalks, which is fine.
I mean, from a money standpoint, yeah, it's going to cost money, but you know, if it was solely affecting the homeowner only, and not to sound against the homeowner, you know, then I could probably turn an eye to it a little more so, but it's working underneath the curb system, which is getting, you know, Sunbury property and same. You know, I'm supposed to keep track of stuff as well as I can, and that's not
And my biggest concern is the sidewalk heaving. I mean, I've tripped on them myself. I've seen kids trip on those. I know we have documented the sidewalk heaving, and it's pretty significant. I think it's showing, at least at last year, 13 full panel replacements with 2 inches or greater heaving. That's, if I'm not mistaken, we're directly attributing that to the trees.
They're almost, yeah, they're all adjacent to a tree.
Right.
So to tie the trees and the sidewalk together again, if we were to yank out all the trees, how much of the sidewalk would we remove just by doing that?
I think we'd still have to do the planing where we have the 1/2 inch or greater offsets. And then we would have to do some panel replacement, and we may lose some panels even as we or whoever our contractor is removes the trees.
That's what I was wondering about in terms of who becomes financially responsible for the replacement of the panels. If we're having to take them out in order to remove the trees.
I think that's on us.
Yeah.
It's our tree lawn tree that's caused the damage. Many communities look at it that way. This could be something that we could go through and prioritize trees and, take 2 or 3 seasons, see how many, we might be able to get through the service department, the smaller ones, a couple dozens of those over the course of a year, a couple dozens by contractors and chew on this for a couple years, or we can just take the hit and start anew.
From what I'm hearing, it sounds like we almost don't have a good choice other than to take the hit and have them removed and then solve for the sidewalks separately.
I can tell you, it's hard to grow new trees if like the thought was eventually, hey, we're gonna, for those who want it, you can plant a tree on your side of the sidewalk. My gut reaction though is it's hard to grow new trees underneath the existing, mature trees. So if we're doing that cycle, I think there's a lot to think through here, and none are easy. Sure, there's people in the neighborhood that are on all sides of this. Like,
I think that's really the next step, is to work to have a time to meet with the neighbors and see what.
It would be interesting to know how attached to the trees they are, just generally speaking, not that that should make a huge difference in the decision making, but
I think we need to go with the wrong trees were planted 20 years ago. They're destroying the sidewalk. If we keep them, they're going to continue to destroy your infrastructure, pipes, driveways, our curbing. And the thought is we should remove these. I mean, we have the authority to do it. We have really the obligation to do it, knowing what damage it's causing. But I think we need to figure out how do we remediate it so it doesn't happen again, and try to give the homeowners the option of tree planting on their side of the sidewalk or something. What are your guys' thoughts?
I think that makes sense.
Just to be clear, when you say planting on their side of the sidewalk, obviously on the closest to the house, so we would not plant any trees in between the street and the sidewalk? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know. I mean, we did in Sunbury Mills last year, the total blighted tree removal. I mean, I think the argument could be made that they would be planted in the tree lawn, but from experience, it's hard to. These trees are big.
Right.
These are.
Right.
Yeah, the trees that came out of the mills were fairly new comparatively, right?
Newer and smaller and not maples.
Yes. So. Can you review quickly the three options that we have to as far as the sidewalk?
Yeah, I think we've narrowed down the options to the trees need to come out. And at that point, we can either enforce the sidewalk ordinance and say, homeowner, you need to fix your sidewalk. Or we can do the planing and what panel replacements, I mean, put everything back together so it's all pretty much new, ADA compliant, and then say this is the one-time fix. Took us 20 years, time, but we're here, we're fixing it, and then from this point on forward, any other issues with your sidewalk or your issues per our current ordinance. I don't, the third option included trying to save the trees, and I'm hearing that's probably not viable. So
The option 2 you said and option 2 in the packet are different, but I would the option 2 that's in the packet, I'm not comfortable with that. Basically where we get a group discount and then charge the individual homeowners for this. I mean,
Well, we're saying the tree was Sunbury's issue, correct? Planting the wrong tree. It was Sunbury's issue. And
I'd say it's a developer's issue. We didn't catch it and didn't know. Yeah, so I mean,
I don't really hold the homeowner responsible for that error. Maybe to fix the sidewalk or to come out of their pocket for the sidewalk.
yeah, let's see.
Yeah.
what I'm hearing is trees are causing enough damage to our infrastructure that they need to go. And then put it back together, slice it where we can to save money. It'll be a good fix if there's no tree working on it, and replace the panels that need replacement, and then move forward from there.
Yeah, I think the one decision maybe yet to be made is just tree replacement and where. And that would be, I'd really like the homeowners to weigh in on that.
Yeah, if they want the freedom to plant on their side of the sidewalk, or if,
Right.
because we probably give them the same trees that you have in mills, right?
Right.
If we were
Like the
going to plant
diverse
that, it wasn't super.
population.
Yeah.
Those were selected based on being able to be planted in that size tree lawn, and
Mhm.
they don't have a root system that goes up,
Yeah.
it's more down. Yeah, I would agree with you.
Yeah, it sounds like that's where we are, and then just need a meeting with the homeowners. Okay,
Have the council representative from Sunbury Estates weigh in?
if he'd like to.
Like, would you like to weigh in now or afterwards?
I think we need definitely to have it open house, and have community input.
So that's geotext.
That's the next step.
Vertical.
I think there's a lot of different
From the side.
different things.
You think people will be heartbroken to see the trees go?
There will be some, yes. But I think if you give them the option of planting another one somewhere in the tree lawn, like Bill said, you're not gonna want to plant it near the location where
Right.
it came up. It won't grow. It'll have to be somewhere else. And to the tree. And not near the discharge lines.
This.
All right.
This was all hooked up. You had
Right.
wood.
Okay. Anything else on trees?
I think that's the most fruitful discussion we've had. It's hard, I mean it.
I've spent an inordinate amount of my time on this committee talking about trees.
You just gotta acknowledge your problem and fix it.
Right. Okay, so we're on to 2023 Street Improvement Program. I saw there were some updates and a term I'd never heard before, which is Cape Seal.
You've heard another one on sheep though. Bottom right, in the black.
Microservices. Yes, I have heard that. Wes, care to enlighten me?
Sure.
Thank you.
So just to recap where we were at last time, on the exhibit handed out, those streets had a mill and fill, which is essentially you plane down the existing asphalt 1.5 inches roughly. In our case, we were planing it down 3 inches and then adding back 3 inches of asphalt, termed mill and fill. Dan Whited from our office and Steve and I had talked. There is some other products out there. One that we think would be applicable to a few of these streets is called a Cape Seal. So the Cape Seal is essentially a chip seal. And the chip seal is basically you put down a heavy tack coat of emulsion, liquid asphalt, and you top that with a aggregate, like a 3/8 inch drive stone cover. That sets, and then you come over top of that with a microsurface course. And the microsurface course is essentially a emulsion liquid asphalt with polymers in it, and it has a fine, it's like a number 10 limestone screening, which is the size of a screening on a trail. If you see an aggregate trail in a park, that's about the size. So it's a mixture of liquid asphalt polymer and aggregate, and that's the microsurface. So it's a 2-step process.
Did that in these guys' neighborhood last year, I believe, or 2 years ago.
That was just the microsurface only. It didn't have the chip seal below it.
Okay.
And this product, there's some, there's probably some options with the aggregate and other things to maybe blacken it up a little bit more and make it aesthetically a little bit more pleasing. With the microsurface, that's some of the comments that you can have initially, is it's not a hot mix asphalt surface. Once it's put down, it can be a little bit see the aggregate in it, and it does weather to a gray look once it's done, same as asphalt, but
Yeah.
It's pretty cost effective. We're pricing it at $12 a square yard. So so what that means as far as just big picture, when you take a look at the exhibit, those green streets have Cape Seal. The red areas would be the mill and fill, or 3 inches of asphalt removed, 3 inches added back. And that total cost versus where we were at doing a mill and fill on all those streets. So with the original, we were about 1.1 million. With the Cape Seal option on a portion of the streets for about 856,000. So bit of a reduction there. So that said, I'll pause for questions, but then I kind of want to see what the thresholds of cost are so we can put.
Is your recommendation the same whether or not we get OPWC funding? Or would, like, what's the lifespan of the roads with the chip and seal?
The Cape Seal or a micro surface is going to be less than a mill and fill. I mean, mill and fill surface, a good 3 inches. Yeah, we expect a good 8 to 10 to 12 years out of there. You're not going to see reflective cracking if it's done right for 3 to 5 years. You're going to start to see some reflective cracking, and then you got a crack seal. But the mill and fill option will last longer. Microsurface, if there's any base issues with the asphalt or extensive cracking, those will reflect up through. So it's kind of a heavy duty microsurface as a Cape Seal. It's a pretty cost effective option. The one thing, adding the chip seal layer on that creates a inner layer there that kind of deflects that reflective crack movement from the underlying course. It's like, imagine I was explaining it like a row of marbles in there. So the base is going to move. It's going to absorb that before it hits the microsurface. So it does add to stop the reflective cracking. And by reflective cracking, I just mean the surface course of cracks become visible. So
for clarification, so with the Cape seal, there is no milling. It is just laid on top of what's existing. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
you basically clean off the surface while they chip seal it, and then they put the micro on top.
Now, my experience with chip seal too, after it's fresh, it'll kick up a lot.
The
For a
chip
while.
seal itself will, and then but with the microsurface on top of there, it'll
Won't have any of that. Okay.
So that's just, we wanted to run some costs to see what that would be. We certainly can go and just stay with the original option of a mill and fill on all those streets, or go to a Cape Seal on where we felt would be applicable, would be your the Chipmunk, Foxtail, that area. And then a portion of Walnut and Evening Street would be your chip seals or your Cape Seals. South Miller, because of the traffic level on there, definitely recommending a mill and fill on that with 3 inches of asphalt. And then that north portion of Walnut's in pretty bad shape. So wanted to recommend the mill and fill on that.
What was the cost difference total, big picture?
So it was, just do that real quick.
About 250.
Yeah, it's about
Yeah.
2.25, roughly 226 was the difference there in construction
We
costs.
submit that we would be doing Cape Seal as part of the OPWC funding. Does it hurt our formula at all?
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
Do we, as part of our OPWC application, does the reduced cost hurt our funding score whatsoever?
Now we could, as far as funding options, I took a look at a couple options. So keeping our original grant at 370, keep the loan at 130,000 would reduce our local cash to about 355 versus the original option. We were at 370 for grant, 130 for loan, and about 582, about 600,000 roughly for your local cash. So back on the Cape Seal option, what I thought is if we reduce our grant request to 200,000, bring our loan to 71,000, because we need to maintain a 26% match to maximize points of loan to OPWC request ratio. then the local funds would stay about the same, 585,000, but the grant request comes down. And that totals the 855 for the Cape Seal option. So by lowering that grant amount, we're increasing our odds of getting funded, I would think. Now, that said, the difference between a grant request of 200,000 and 370, the 370 is what we looked at for round 36 as being an average grant request. So we're right there. But just, if you're going with an application with a $200,000 grant request and almost a $600,000 local match in cash, that's pretty strong statement there that, would look fair. Just working the numbers there. We have time. The application's due that last Friday in November. I think that's the 4th. So intent here right now is just to, one, introduce the Cape Seal, say that we have, if we were pinpointing 1.1 million for construction, we have some additional dollars there to either Cape Seal additional streets, or we could scale the whole thing back. And then between now and the application submittal, we'll have several council meetings and fine tune the numbers and the strategy of funding.
I like it. I think it gives a little bit of flexibility.
So just some more math for you. So the additional savings, if we were to convert that to linear feet of additional street, you could get another, about 1.25 miles of roadway covered at a 24-foot width. So quite a few more streets that we could Cape Seal with the $250,000 roughly. So that's a couple options there.
Sorry, I'm just gonna play devil's advocate. Our original plan was we were gonna do 600,000.
Right.
The proposed is we would do 585, net $15,000 less. And the majority of the reduction in cost is actually in just a reduced grant application. So in other words, like the money that we're moving between the two, the delta is really in a reduced grant request. In other words, not Sunbury's money. None of the grant is Sunbury's money. We're talking about a $370,000 grant that I felt like we were comfortable with the formula to reducing it to a $200,000 grant, just to, I don't want to call it a sure thing, but it's increasing our chances. So in other words, like when you said the extra money that we could do additional street repairs, that would be
Bringing it back up to 1.1 million.
yeah, but that's not coming from grant at that point. That's out of pocket.
Well, we could increase the grant amount with that and stick with the original option of 370 and take the 1.1 million, then do additional Cape Sealing with the original funding formula of 370, 130, and 600.
Might just want to look at last year's scoring again and just see
what
where like the sweet spot is in that. I really hate to miss this again.
Right.
But I remember when I originally looked at it, and I don't have all the data in front of me, I felt good with the $600,000 contribution, 370,000 grant, and the difference in the loan. It just seemed like it scored better than we had in the past. I know there's a lot of other communities we're hitting a moving target, right? It's a good option to evaluate. When do we need to make a decision?
So we'll have one more council meeting on the 19th. We probably want to finalize our decision and pass the ordinance on the 19th with the final funding so we can get things prepared for that meeting. And then the application's due on November 4th. So we want to do our council ordinance on the 19th. And everybody's here on council, so we'll be able to communicate that easily.
Okay. Moving on, stormwater utility program. Where are we with that?
So Dan White and I have been working on this. We've prepared some just in-house working documents, looking at all the different tasks and so on. And we've broken down a fee estimate. And I guess in a snapshot, what I would like to say is task 1 is called a concept review. Task 2 is a workshop. And we think at that point we'll be at about $9,000 to $10,000 range in time that we could give the city a pretty good snapshot of what this is going to look like, the rates, the impervious numbers, just a framework of what the stormwater ordinance would look like. So you can make a decision at that point, because the balance of the requirements as far as the program analysis, the benefits, drawbacks review, the education outreach strategy, rate methodology, the other steps to develop the rest of the utility would be another $25,000 to $30,000 worth of time. So we wanted to come up with a good summary and a point to where you can make a go, no go decision. So my ask would be, if you want us to move forward with that initial conceptual plan and define cost, look at, the market rate in the area for these, take a look at stormwater needs in general. This isn't a deep dive, but it's enough information to make a decision on. So that's I thought would be a first good step if you want to go down that route. So say not to exceed 10,000, it would be the concept phase and a workshop. We could have a council workshop or a separate workshop to move forward and present that information.
Can we create a project code in finance for this? I just wanted to mark that as we're booking expenses, that we're incorporating it into anything that the utility could potentially capture back, and I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah. Yet another thing we've talked about for so long. It's nice to see some forward momentum on it.
Thanks, Liz.
Any other questions on stormwater utility before we move on? Next item, moving into new business, General Rosecrans Elementary School crosswalk. Joe and Cindy and I attended a meeting earlier this week regarding the crosswalk. My gosh, I can't talk tonight. And essentially, the proposal is to install a crosswalk. What was that intersection, Joe? I don't remember.
So on Fairland Drive, it's basically the north exit of General Rosecrans Elementary that connects over to Sunbury Point Apartments. I can't remember the street name.
There is apparently a fair amount of chaos as the kids let out at the end of the day, and they're kind of going up over the hill and just crossing the street wherever, going back in towards the apartments, and there's limited visibility along the road, somewhat because of trees and somewhat because of cars illegally parking to bypass the pickup line for GRE. So what was I'm not quite sure what all we were going to talk about tonight, Joe.
This is probably just an
bring it
update
up
for the services committee. I think it's in probably this committee's wheelhouse to just be aware. I was approached by school staff about adding a crosswalk, and I said, well, we have a crosswalk. We actually have two. One is at Fairland and Miller, and the other one is at Fairland, and I can't remember if it's Woodchuck or Woodchuck. And what I found out is that's not the issue. It's the issue in between the two. I think they're maybe 800 feet apart or 1,000 feet apart, something like that. And even though they aren't technically roads, the driveway from the school and the access from the private drive from the apartment complex, folks are crossing in the middle there because it's the point from A to B. They're getting from the apartments to the school and vice versa. And it's not just students, it's parents as well, crossing traffic, with the intermediate school traffic on that drive and the turn coming from Miller, left turn, you kind of have a little bit of a blind spot there and people are walking across the street. I asked if they had evaluated crosswalk options, communication with students and parents, and I think they're in that process of doing that. The school principal and the superintendent are going to review this option that's been presented by CT Dan Whited to the PTO. We'll see what feedback comes back from that, but we don't want to invest money if really it's process, procedure, and accountability changes that need to happen in education. We also don't want anyone to be hit by a car crossing in a non-approved intersection. More to come on that.
Yep.
That's my 2 cents on that would be, if you don't have to commit to a lighting system right out of the gate, if you can do it with 30-inch signs and get people to, you know.
A lot cheaper to put up a sign. Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking for each luminaire that you put in, they're probably about $4,500 a piece now. So. You know.
I think they're even more than, if you're talking about the ones like we have down here, I think they might be more than that.
Yeah, and we'll talk about those too.
Sounds good.
All right, and then finally, Sunbury data mapping. And I'm told that you might have a presentation on this for us.
Ken, would I be able to test drive it on? Yeah, is this your?
Is that it?
Okay.
Let me bump my head and get under there.
Perfect, let's do that.
Yeah, I put it on OneDrive. I put a link on there. So.
I just want to go back in history to former committee members. This was kind of an ask from Greg Elliott. If anybody remembers old Greg, good guy, asked a lot of questions, just like John Grumney. And Wes is really run with this, and I love when people do this. I ask him a question and 3 months later come back and say, hey, is this what you were looking for? And it's like almost exactly what I was looking for, and I forgot about it for a little bit. But I'm really excited about this.
Services, yeah.
I'll give a brief lead into it, Wes, and then you can roll with the cool stuff. But GIS or GPS, like the Global Positioning System, Global Information System.
Yes, this is the one you want.
There's a company called Arcgis.
URL.
It's kind of the backbone for how you map things. And there we go. I'll let Wes speak to this, but it's really cool how we've incorporated county GIS data, and we're in the beginning phases of mapping in utility infrastructure. This can be used for tree mapping. This can be used for manholes, light poles, traffic lights, fiber. It's a way that we can say, hey, Woodchuck Lane, and pull it up and see where, you know, all of our asset and liabilities are. I think it's really going to be helpful for Dina as well going forward as we're building out the asset listing and understanding where things are, and we can tie it to actual depreciable values.
Thank you. That was
And the best thing is it's really
Good
cheap.
overview.
So
yeah.
Can't beat
So-
that.
Just to add to what the mayor had explained there. So this product is called Arcgis Online. It's an online version. The company that's the world leader in GIS is Esri, ERSI. It's just called Esri if you do a Google on it. So this product, it has a cloud-based GIS system. And so our GIS in-house pros use a software called Arcgis Pro to actually develop this, and then they kind of post it on the online service, and then you can view it easily with an iPad, any device, and a link. It's not heavy on any computer usage, so which makes it really, when you zoom in and out, there's no lag on it or anything like that. So that's a little bit of the product. The thing I like about it is with our municipal clients, it's an easy way to get into GIS. So you can purchase the Arcgis Online license for less than $1,000 a year. And we basically build we'll port in the county layers to it as a base. And that has an automatic link. So anytime the county updates a layer, there's a lot split, a parcel line, a owner change, floodplains, anything like that automatically gets updated. So that creates an easy base. And then you simply build layers on top of that, your customized layers. That Delaware County has a robust GIS system. So it makes it easy. If you go out to a rural county, just about every county has a GIS system, but some may only show an aerial with property lines and owners, and there's not other information on there. So we're at an advantage because of the system that Delaware County has. So with that, what you're seeing on the screen right now, and I'll just zoom into a subdivision. This is Sunbury Meadows right here. So what we did is, if you look at this first pull down is the legend. So that goes through what all the colors and symbols and lines are. Pretty straightforward there. This is your layer list. These things stacked on each other is the layer list symbol. So where it just has a name, a layer name, that's a county layer. So that comes in automatically. Where it has the word Sunbury in front of it, underscore, those are layers that we've created. So when you scroll down, for example, you see those green lines go on and off. We maintain an AutoCAD map of your storm, sanitary, and water. We simply just ported that information in and overlaid that into the system quickly. Just to zoom in a little more, each one of these points would be a manhole structure that would. These are right now they were essentially a CAD point, so what needs to happen is as we advance this, you would actually go out with a survey grade or a sub-meter GPS unit and physically locate things so that the accuracy gets a little bit better. I didn't want anybody to get hung up on that right now and just get the information in there. For the purposes of it's within 3 to 5 feet, we're okay right now. We'll get to the accuracy piece later. So that's an overview of the layers. We've created these ones that are called Sunbury. All the rest of them come in through the county system. What else could what we did real quick, I'll just show you. We created some attributes around town square here. So these symbols you see here are these are that's a regulatory sign, handicap parking only. So when this is on a layer of signs, and what we were able to do, and this is just what I'll call adding desktop attributes by having one of our geospatial technicians go in, looking at the orthophoto or the photo, and just they can see where the signs are, and then they can look at Street View at Google and say that it's a 25-mile-an-hour sign. Like when I click on this sign, they put the speed limit in there. So they could physically locate things from the desktop, which is okay for some features, but things like manholes or water valves, you may want a survey shot on it. So, or you can't see them through a photo, but there's certain things above grade like signs and.
You click on one of the red and black dots, like this one, I think is important.
So that's the signal pole for that intersection at Cherry and Columbus, and you can locate each one of your signal poles, and then you see all these different layers of information that you can add to them. That can all be customized, and age of the pole. We can put in timing information at each intersection. At our office, we've been talking about adding another layer that would just be a icon at the intersection, and you would have all your signal timing information as we kind of move through that process to get these signals a little bit better coordinated throughout the city. So just these red features here was we created an example of additional information that you can quickly add to it. some of the other cool things, we just added zoning to it, so you can see your zoning map shows up on there. So if you were looking at a parcel and you wanted to know what that is zoned, you can go over and move around the transparency. So you want to see something behind it, you can bring that color down so you can see what's visible there.
Come on now, you might want to save some for next meeting because I think these guys are liking it.
I love this. This is cool.
Some other cool features just on the financial planning of how development proceeds, and these layers that come in through CRAs, enterprise zones, JEDs are all recorded through the county level. So you can, tell where all the TIFs. Let me turn off a couple things here. So your Tif districts are shown. Yeah, let's see, you can probably get a better view here.
You can overlay this CRA.
Yeah, so here's all the TIF districts, and this goes well outside the corporate boundary, but and just on that note, real quick, this includes, as you pan through the county, all the rest of the information comes in as well. That's available on a county layer. So Delco water, other zoning, if you were scrolling around just as a tool. Your NCA areas are shown there. Right.
Does the Delco layer have pipe diameters on it?
Yeah, it does.
That's useful too.
Yeah, it's got so you would click on that, and then if you go over, so I click the floodplain water, 8-inch treated water. So it'll show that, yeah.
That's very useful.
Another nice feature just on these. So if you click on NCA and you wanted to know, I'll just show you what the attribute table looks like. So if you go here, and then you have to come over to these 3 dots, and then you click on the attribute table. It'll let you know the North Star NCA. This didn't have a date on it. The others did, but it'll show dates on when those were created, like that TIF layer. Go back to that so I can show you. Has the ordinance and dates and useful information on there, like the Tanger Outlet Mall TIF was February 24, 2015. So that, again, all that information is coming in from the county, but it's a pretty useful document. And you can scroll through all the attribute tables here on the top. Another pretty cool feature, these things up here are called widgets. So you can put an app on your phone with this particular one, and it'll show you your location. Your typical phone will get you within 10 or 15 feet actual location. If you've ever noticed on like the Find My iPhone apps, it'll as you move around your house, sometimes you can kind of see where you're at. So they're not too bad of a device, but just from like Brad's perspective, if he's trying to, we got some buried manholes there in the elementary off of Columbus Street. If he was trying to find one of those, you can actually, it'll show the blue dot where you're at on the phone app, so you can get close to it. And there's devices that you can buy that plug into your phone or iPad that'll get within a half meter for about $300. You can get the accuracy increased. But back on the widgets, one thing that the mayor and Dana had asked about, which is a layer here on the county called address points. If you go into the apartment complex behind Kroger, see, zoom in. There you go. Yeah, right here. Yeah. So this address points here is the county information. What we could do is create. I was talking to Mark Hammond in our office, and he's one of our lead GIS techs. So we could take and make a widget. It's called. It would extract. So when you click on these, it has the addresses, but it would extract all that information from address points and you can download it to a CBS file and then bring that into Excel. So then you can have whatever information you want as far as addresses or things like that. And yeah, I think you can do it by street. I asked Mark if we could do it by a location feature, meaning you circle or you put a radius from a certain point. And the answer is always yes. It's just the complication of building that particular item. So these are customized. We can customize tools to do certain things. The other piece I'll mention, just because we're running out of time real quick, is there's a public app for this. So once this is set up within the city, you would have this version, which could have all your layers that you want to see internally as like administrative view, we'll call it. And then you would have a public view. So say on the public view, you typically don't have everything on there. It would just be normal layers. And then you could put all kind of information on there. You could do road closure layer for construction purposes. You could do leaf pickup zones with dates. You could do, Worthington has features where they have a citizen reporting watch, on potholes or drainage issues, and but be ready for a list when you create that. There's a lot of good public interface with it as well that can be done pretty inexpensively. So I'll stop there. There's a lot of neat things here.
David, what do you think?
Really cool. I think that's really neat. And the first thing that I thought of was, I wonder if you could incorporate it with our ongoing streets program, where you could see, well, okay, this street that I'm driving down and just noticed some issues with, where does it fall in our street plan? I love this.
We were going to take that last pavement rating we did before the road biotics rating was done. It was 2 or 3 years ago, and we actually have that done in GIS. Mark just hasn't added that layer yet, and I know that rating's 3 or 4 years old, but it will populate through color on the different ratings. So you would be able to see quickly what that pavement condition is. And that's important though, because they can kind of get a visual on where money needs to be spent. Even though they're looking at their street, they can see the other streets in very poor condition, and that needs to be taken care of first.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, helps out the politics on that a little bit.
We have just enough time for any last second questions or concerns.
Round of applause, or-
A round of applause. I think it might be deserved in that case. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Wes.
Okay, thank you very much, Wes. Appreciate it. I am going to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call. Oh, sorry.
David Capel.
Yes.
David John.
Yes.
Ray Knapp.
Yes.
John Grumney.
Yes.
Fourier.
Thank you. What's that? Is it a good time to get downstairs?
Depends on how quick you are.
Probably have just a couple minutes.
You have a water bottle there.
That's 1 minute. It's in me.
On your mark, it's set.
I don't know, you were having trouble.